here. Kayvon Stosson. And you mentioned Beverly Watford. Do we have any other board members on the call today?
You didn't mention Roger Beachy, member of the committee.
And I see Marvi Matos.
Marvi Matos, yeah.
Merlin Theodore on.
Oh,
Hey, back to you, Wanda. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, and thanks so many of our board colleagues for joining today's meeting as well. On behalf of the rest of the committee, I warmly welcome the new members to CO, Yolanda Gill, Jeffrey Isaacson, and Willie May, all who've graciously accepted Dario's invitation to join CO. We are looking forward to your insights and investment of time in this committee. Our NSBO liaisons are Ann Bushmiller, Portia Flowers, and Alexandra Serchel. Our executive secretary is Steli Stefanko from the Inspector General's office. So first, let's approve the minutes from the open CO meeting on March 7th, 2024. There was an extensive membership overlap last year between the CO and the Merit Review Commission. The commission was operating under a deadline and met frequently. That's an understatement. As a result, the CO met relatively infrequently. This is the first open meeting the CO has held since that meeting. You can find the minutes in your diligent CO book in the current meeting tab. I hope you're able to read them already, but I pause for a moment before asking for approval. All right. Does anyone have any correction of the minutes? Are the minutes accepted as presented? Not everyone at the same time now.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. The minutes are accepted as presented or amended. The closed minutes from the August 27th meeting last year are also in your diligent book. Because they are closed, we will approve them via email. We'll send an email to accomplish this later today. The business of the meeting will begin with information from the Office of Integrative Affairs regarding the data presented in the 2022 and 2023 Merit Review Digests. Then the Chief Financial Officer will give us an update on activities she supervises. Finally, we will hear a report from OIG's independent auditor on the outcome of the fiscal year 2024 audits. So I'll turn you over now to Alicia Needler, the head of the Office of Integrative Activities, to describe data presented in the Merit Review Digests, as I said, for fiscal years 2022 and 2023. For the benefit of new members of the committee, let me briefly describe the Merit Review Digests. The purpose of the digest is to inform the foundation's stakeholders, including its leadership team, the science and engineering community, Congress, the National Science Board, the general public, on the work that NSF does through its merit review process. This includes providing summary annual statistics that characterize the proposal and awarding process, and statistics on the individuals and organizations submitting proposals and receiving awards. An example of the type of statistical information the digests provide is the number of proposals awarded and declined and funding rates in the applicable fiscal year. The digests themselves make no recommendations about NSF's merit review policies, processes, or outcomes. However, the board does adopt a short policy document called an overview based on data contained in the digest. The overview document is prepared by this committee and is formally attached to the digest upon publication. Based in part on the information presented and discussion that we'll have today, staff will adjust a draft for committee review in the next couple of weeks so that the full board may vote on it in February. CO members will have an opportunity to discuss the data displayed and trends and implications of that data after the presentation. Alicia, the floor is yours.
Excuse me. Thank you, Wanda, and thank you, CO committee members. Wanda, you mentioned several things I was going to give in terms of an overview of the digest. I don't have a presentation with slides or anything that way, but I'm happy to answer some questions. I have a little bit of information on data that I could provide, but so I might repeat a little bit of what you've just said. The Merit Review Digest, as Wanda described, provides summary statistics on NSF proposals awarded and declined in a given fiscal year. So each digest is for a fiscal year. Last month, NSF published 2 Merit Review Digest reports covering FY22 and FY23, and those are available right now on OIA's Evaluation and Assessment Capabilities website. The FY22 publication is the culmination of a multi-year effort to modernize the behind-the-scenes process used to create the report so that NSF can reliably and timely produce the report moving forward. So in FY22 and FY23, we were so quick that we were able to produce them and make them available. But because of the MRX work that Wanda already mentioned, I think that we've now have these 2 reports available for an overview. The FY24 report, which is the next report, has been drafted and is currently in review within NSF. We anticipate that it will be available for the committee's consideration within about a month. The Merit Review Digest is just one way in which NSF provides the research community with data about our merit review process. The digest is complemented by NSF by the Numbers, which is an online interactive dashboard or set of dashboards with near real-time data for key statistics and trends. And we encourage you to take a look at NSF by the Numbers. So just really quickly, in FY22 and FY23, we saw continued decreases in proposal submissions and a corresponding increase in funding rates. The FY24 data, as shown on NSF by the Numbers, and this would be part of the forthcoming digest report, that proposal submissions actually increased slightly and the funding rate subsequently decreased slightly. Again, if you're interested in those trends, you can look at NSF by the Numbers at this point. Award size for a research project in nominal dollars has been generally increasing over the last 10 years, but after adjusting for inflation, the average award size has decreased. A number of years ago, we implemented changes to how we collect demographic data to improve our response rates from the participants in NSF's activities. We continue to see high response rates and relatively low levels of missing data. For example, in demographic data categories around gender, race, and ethnicity, and persons with disability. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, but I know that you have a full agenda, so.
Wanda, you're muted.
Thank you, Portia. I thought I had clicked that. Thank you for that. But again, thank you, Alicia, for your report. And I would like to open it up to the committee. Are there any questions for Alicia?
Roger,
Your
they have
physical
their
hand.
hand raised.
It is. I can't find my hand raise function right now. I'm sorry. Alicia, would you go in a little bit more detail about what you said? There was a slight increase in applications
Mhm.
in 23-24. Is that the right year?
In FY24.
FY24. So there was a little bit of an increase. Do we know anything more? Has that been parsed to institution type by any chance?
So you can actually do that on NSF by the numbers
Oh,
if
can
you're
you?
interested. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen for NSF by the numbers here just really quickly, because this shows the utility of having an interactive dashboard. Let's see. Are you seeing my screen? I don't think so.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. So here, this is the trends. Let's see if okay. This is the trends. We have proposals evaluated, new awards funded, funding rate, the institutions, and then the award obligation. And you can filter these by using the little funnel at the top on either side so that you can do comparisons. So you can filter by EPSCoR states, minority serving institutions, different types of MSIs, the institution types, generally speaking, using these categories, as well as other organizations, not just academic institutions, states and territories, and the directorates. So this is quite a powerful tool. The digest has tables that doesn't actually go into this level of filtering, but you could do that by hand using the digest, but this is a pretty quick tool. And right here, you can see the FY24 data is shown by the number, but if you go backwards and track over the line, you will see that each fiscal year pops up as you go through the line. And then you can also click on this little box with an arrow, and it will provide you all the numbers in the line. And if you click on this little table, it will give you more of an Excel spreadsheet kind of view.
Do you know, Alicia, if there's been a study commissioned on that drop off, that what you saw there in those interim years?
Yeah, so we've been looking into a lot of different, it's complicated, is the quick
Yeah.
answer. And we do think that a certain portion of the data are explained here by going to more no deadline programs, such that individuals were submitting
Right.
fewer proposals each year because the deadline was, we have a couple deadlines a year.
Yeah, I know we've been talking about in that interpretation, but I'm wondering if a study has been done, and because I think it's a concern if it doesn't pick back up. What does it mean about our universities? What does it mean about expectations? Where are we going to be on innovation and knowledge generation? Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you both. I believe Willie and Jeffrey have their hands up.
Yeah. What does the FY25 budget look like for funds to support this effort?
To support what effort?
Proposal funding.
You mean outreach and engagement?
Yes.
Well, that's infused in all of the work that we do within every directorate, division, and program throughout NSF.
So basically, what is the overall prospects? What do we feel like the incoming administration will propose for NSF?
So I think that that's probably beyond what I can talk about with respect to the Merit Review Digest at this point.
Okay.
Jeffrey?
Just as a point to wrap or address part of Willie's question. I'm Janice Coughlin. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for NSF. We are operating under a continuing resolution, so we're
Right.
operating on fiscal 24 levels. We don't expect that the House and Senate funding levels that were proposed under the prior Congress will necessarily be indicative of what we'll see in 25. We don't quite know. The appropriations committees are both organizing in the House and Senate, and we don't have a lot more information yet on what the new leadership in the Congress will support. And we have some limited information on what we might expect from the incoming administration based on public statements around total funding levels, but not specific to NSF. So we'll be watching that closely, and we'll certainly keep you posted as new developments and as we hear more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey?
Thanks. Alicia, before I ask the question, let me say that I did read through the document, so I apologize if I missed one thing that I'm curious about, and that is proposals with external third-party cost sharing or funding. Wondering whether NSF is tracking any of that type of data, especially with the new TIP directorate and the awards emanating therein. Thanks.
So generally speaking, we don't allow for voluntary cost share for NSF's proposals. So we have a few programs that allow for cost sharing, have mandatory cost sharing, but voluntary, non-mandatory cost sharing is not allowed across NSF's programs.
Well, let me be more specific. That was probably an unfortunate choice of words.
Okay.
Does NSF, track proposals where other external partners come in and actually provide funding that contributes, to an overall goal of a proposal or award? That wouldn't necessarily be cost sharing. So, for example, if the state government was willing to, contribute, so many dollars toward parts of proposals, I'm pretty sure that some of the engines type of awards, have components like that. No?
So I'm not an expert on the engines. And so if the engines, and Janice, help me out here, I'll phone a friend here. But if an NSF program allows for cost sharing, then yes, we track what comes in through each project. But if the program, the NSF funding opportunity, does not allow for cost sharing, then projects cannot include cost sharing.
But he's asking, I think, if I get it right, Jeff, asking about submissions that include another party, a partner.
Right.
Right, but they can't.
That's not cost share per se. That's.
Well, if they're putting money in, a state can't put money into a project if it's not allowed by the program itself.
But there are programs that do allow it, and so I guess my question is whether that's tracked and whether that rises to a level of interest, perhaps given the magnitude of it, which I can't quite know sitting where I am today, relative to the entire $8 to $9 billion of budget.
So go ahead, Janice.
To kind of flip this a little bit. So NSF does, and particularly through our TIP directorate, we have a strategic partnerships hub. And so where NSF has a partnership with another organization, it may be another federal agency or a nonprofit or a for-profit who's willing to contribute money towards NSF awards. That happens at a broad level. It doesn't happen at the proposal level. And then, so we do track partnership dollars that we leverage from other agencies and other organizations. We also have started a process to try to track how some of our investments, our awards, may have catalyzed additional partnerships beyond our proposal and our agreement. And so there's some work that we're doing in that space in collaboration with Alicia's team and with our TIP colleagues to track that partnership data, both by counts of numbers of partners, agreements we have, and dollars leveraged. And so some of that count shows up in our annual performance report. That'll be actually something I'll be talking about shortly, and we'll make public in a few days, and we'll be able to share that with you. But that is something we are actively working on trying to capture. But again, that's really generally at the program level and not at a discrete proposal level, because we have some very clear cost share requirements and restrictions.
Well, thanks. Not to belabor it, any insights on trend lines? Given the increasing,
Yes.
private funding and R&D, is that line going up, going down?
We see an increase in NSF partnerships and dollars leveraged. we have seen that, and that has been a result of a very focused effort under Dr. Panchnathan to ensure that we're doing that and create those relationships across the sectors. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thanks.
All right, I'm mindful of the time. We'll take a comment, a question from Kayvon, but let me join everyone, Kayvon, in congratulating you again on the very distinguished Medal of Science Award. Well deserved.
Thank you, Wanda. Thank you, everyone. I wanted to piggyback on the question, the bit of discussion we were just having. I'm thinking about two mechanisms in particular that already exist as part of the proposal submission process on the one hand, and as part of the annual reporting process on the other. And I've wondered about this in the past about NSF's data collection and sort of scraping from those two things in terms of monitoring, call it in-kind or partnership, and sort of the value of those things. So as part of the proposal submission process, I know that proposers can, I have, included in the, help me with the name of the ancillary document, the facilities and other resources thing. I think that's where one is permitted, in fact, even encouraged to list resources and contributions from partners and others. And I know one always has to be careful about representing it as committed, whatever that terminology is. But nonetheless, proposers often include in that ancillary documentation specifically resources and those things that have some kind of value to the project. And then in the annual reporting, I know there's specifically a question or a place to represent partnerships and collaborations. And one is specifically asked as part of the annual reporting process, whether those contributions from partners or collaborators were in the form of money, in kind, personnel, etc. So I know that those two things exist, and so maybe as a part of adding to the conversation we were just having, to what extent is NSF able to sort of scrape from those two sources of data and capture them in the tracking that we're talking about?
Well, I can speak to the annual reporting. That is something that actually we are working across NSF to identify how we can take that. It's not well, we are identifying how we can pull that information and, as you said, scrape it and show the broader picture. So that is an ongoing effort, and it's not just to mine that information, but other information that would help us better demonstrate NSF's impact and pulling that out of annual reports. So that is an ongoing effort, and we're happy to talk more about that in another session. On the front end, I don't know, Alicia, if you know more on.
Yeah, so you were talking about facilities, equipment, and other resources section. And, that's helpful for the reviewers to see what the environment, because they need to comment on the investigators and the environment with which they're doing their work. And yes, they cannot monetize the resources. That's one thing that we do not want anyone to do. So it would be difficult to pair those two things together. And again, most of the time when people are utilizing the facilities, equipment, other resources, they're trying to help reviewers understand their environment. So it may not be a representative data set, so to speak, about what's available. It depends on the project and the team and how they wrote the proposal.
And if I might, just very briefly, it occurs to me as part of the annual reporting thing where investigators are asked specifically about the contributions and whether those contributions in some cases represent money or in kind. If I remember correctly, there is not an explicit prompt to attach a monetary value or equivalent to those contributions. I wonder if that might be helpful for your data scraping purposes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kayvon. And there are a number of important questions that we would like to engage around the Merit Review Digest. Our time doesn't allow us to do that today, but we will find appropriate ways, Alicia and others, things like which was alluded to or related to the previous conversation, but issues about the multi-sectoral partnerships that we're increasingly moving to, the perennial question about the number of months, annual number of months budgeted salary support for graduate students. We've talked about and will continue to be interested in congressionally mandated BI categories, how we keep track of that. Funding that goes to co-PI, subawardees, and contractors, et cetera. Dwell time, of course. I would like to ask one last question for a brief response, and then we must move on. But we will follow up on these other important questions. There used to be data in the digest that included demographic information about program officers and reviewers. And I was wondering, Alicia, where can these data be viewed publicly now? And do they include geographic and institutional data of those program officers and reviewers?
So I'd have to scan the, we'll get back to you on some of this, but
Okay.
I would say that maybe the power of doing intersectional data considerations is in an interactive environment
Mhm.
as opposed to static tables.
Okay. Well, this is another question along with the ones that I mentioned that we will follow up with you about. But I certainly want to thank you again and your staff for the time that you spent with us today and for this helpful information. As the committee completes a draft of the overview, we may send some additional questions to your office. Okay? Thank you again, Alicia.
Thank you.
And now we'll move on to Chief Financial Officer and Performance Improvement Officer's update from Janice Coughlin-Peaster, who's been contributing to our conversation just thus far. Janice?
Thank you very much, Wanda, and good afternoon. I realize that not everyone knows me or knows the part of NSF that I oversee, so if you'll indulge me, I'll give you a quick highlight of both of those. So this spring will mark my 26th year in federal service across 5 different federal agencies, the last 7 of which have been here at NSF at my great privilege. My expertise is centered around affecting and implementing public policy through federal budget and appropriations and business operations. So I serve as the head of our Office of Budget, Finance, and Award Management, known as BFA. So you may hear that acronym an awful lot. And in that role, I also carry the titles of CFO and Performance Improvement Officer. So, and I have a team of staff who touch every dollar that NSF awards multiple times throughout its life cycle. So to start off, we have our budget division who leads the agency's formulation and execution of our budget. I also have in my immediate office a performance team who runs our strategic plan process every 4 years. And then ensures the internal processes to develop our annual performance plans and reporting in keeping with various federal requirements around that. We have the Division of Financial Management who maintains our financial management policies that assure that our financial reporting is accurate and that we're spending funding in accordance with federal laws. We also manage our payment system so that our awardees can draw down their funds once awarded. And we'll hear more about a key other part that we run of this process when the Office of Inspector General's independent auditor walks us through their audit of our financial statements later in this meeting. We also in BFA serve as the entity with the authority to make awards on behalf of NSF. So once our program colleagues have conducted the merit review process and identified the proposals that they seek to fund, we then take up the workload and work on pre-award reviews of potential awardees to ensure that they have the capacity to appropriately handle federal funds and report back to us. We negotiate terms and conditions, and we primarily make awards in one of 3 categories. We make financial assistance grant awards. These are our standard research grants, our fellowships, and the like. We issue cooperative agreements. This is another type of financial assistance award. And many of these, we use this mechanism when there's a necessity for NSF involvement a greater NSF involvement. So this is how we manage many of our major facilities and other research infrastructure, for example. So there's increased involvement day to day in those activities. And then the third mechanism is contracts or other agreements, and we use those for services that the agency needs, or things like the Antarctic logistics contract. And all of those awards are made across two divisions that sit within BFA, our Division of Grants and Agreements and the Division of Acquisition and Cooperative Support. We also have the Division of Institution and Awardee Support, and they issue our grant policy guidance. So the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide, known as the PAP Guide. They also conduct larger pre-award reviews and negotiate indirect cost rates for some of our awardees. And then also within BFA, we have the Research Infrastructure Office. This is formerly known as the Large Facilities Office. And this is where our subject matter experts sit, where they establish policy for research infrastructure and assist in project planning and oversight, both of the operations and maintenance for our research infrastructure, as well as construction of new infrastructure. So in addition to setting policies, making awards, and spending the money, we're also heavily involved on post-award activity. So if, for example, an awardee needs to make a modification, a PI is transferring to another institution, we'll work with them to ensure that they can transfer the award and work to the new institution. We also conduct oversight around compliance with our terms and conditions, and we certainly work very closely with our Office of Inspector General colleagues and the awardees in resolving any audit findings around things like allowable costs. So across all these functions, we provide technical assistance and outreach to the research community. We partner with our program colleagues, and we facilitate processes to ensure that as an agency, we're identifying and mitigating enterprise level risks beyond just those in the financial and compliance areas that we see in BFA. So it's a very exciting portfolio of work, and we are really excited that we get to support such a great mission. So since the last CFO update I provided in December, I wanted to highlight 3 activities. The first is December 9th through 12th of last year, we held our fall 2024 virtual grants conference. We had just under 4,700 participants who represented 990 institutions. And among those participants, about 23% came from a minority serving institution. We were excited to see that 12% were new or early stage investigators. And as normal, the majority of our participants, in this case, 64%, are research administrators. Our next conference will be hybrid, and it'll be hosted in New Orleans, May 21st through the 23rd. The second item is that we stood up a cross NSF Tiger team to address some audit findings that you'll hear about shortly when Brian Nelms presents his firm's findings. And then lastly, I alluded to it earlier in our discussion, but later today, we hope to release our fiscal 2024 annual performance report. So this is a document that is normally combined with our forward-looking annual performance plan, and it's usually combined with the president's budget request. So in this case, it would normally be with the next request, which would be the fiscal 2026 president's budget. With the administration change, we are removing the performance plan portion or separating the plan from the report. And so the plan will be developed with the next White House team. For the report on last year's performance, we've received OMB's clearance to post that, as I noted, as early as this afternoon. As soon as I have that firm, I will make sure to get copies to you through the NSBO team. We are happy to schedule a future briefing with you and perhaps do that in combination with the Committee on Strategy as we have in years past. We'd like to make sure we're bringing in key leads for different activities like the agency priority goal, our TIP colleagues to continue the discussion we started here around partnerships, for example. Be good to have those folks here to really talk about the progress that we've made in the last year. So let me just close by noting that the work of BFA is made possible by top-notch subject matter experts, effective partnerships with our program colleagues and other business operations colleagues, and critical relationships and ongoing coordination with our Office of Inspector General. So Allison Lerner and her team are fantastic to work with. We collectively, our BFA and OIG teams, recognize that we have a shared mission and that this partnership has really enabled NSF to say for the last 27 years that our financial reporting and our controls demonstrate effective stewardship of taxpayer dollars in the advancement of our mission. So we don't rest on our laurels. We seek to continually improve each year. But I know of no other CFO Act agency who has the same track record. So we're very, very happy about that. So thank you very much for your time. I yield back to Wanda and the team with any questions or the next agenda item.
Thank you very much, Janice, and the committee looks forward to learning more about the annual performance report this spring and other things that you have referenced. Are there any questions? Do committee members have any questions for Janice? Let's see. I don't see any hands. Am I missing? To keep it on a neutral note, let me put it that way, Janice, but we are interested in knowing any more about how NSF is addressing the backlog of OIG recommendations as of today. Can you give us some update on where things are there?
I don't have numbers at my fingertips right now. I can say there's different categories of ongoing work with respect to single audits and audit resolution. Our team actually conducted a robust sprint over fiscal 2024. We had a number of very complicated single audit findings that required multiple years of coordination between the IG, the auditors, and the awardees. And so we have pushed through that backlog, and we no longer have any backlog for that in that space. We have a few minor items where we're just waiting for confirmation from IG. We pushed an awful lot to their space, so we appreciate that. There's multiple steps in this process. And then we also have a number of other OIG audits that span beyond the BFA space that we continue to make progress to address recommendations there. That is something I'm happy to get you our latest semi-annual report that has numbers on and timelines for progress.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you again, Janice. We look forward to continuing to work with you. And so next we will hear an update from the OIG's contracted independent auditor, Kearney and Company, regarding their audit reports on NSF's FY 2024 financial statement and on Federal Information Security Modernization Act, or FISMA. CO members will have an opportunity to comment and ask questions after this presentation. I turn it over to you, Allison.
Thank you so much, Wanda. And thanks to all of the committee members for being here today. I'm pleased to present and to turn the mic over shortly to the partners from Kearney who'll speak to these two audits. Quickly, let me do a brief introduction of myself. I am Allison Lerner. I'm the Inspector General here at NSF, and I've been in this position for 15.5 years. I hope at a future date, I'll have a chance to talk to you all more about what our office does and how it's organized. But right now, I think we want to keep our focus and attention on these two very important audits. So I will be introducing the two partners who are reporting out. Kearney and Company has been conducting both our financial statement and our FISMA audits for the past 9 years. You'll be hearing from Brian Nelms, who's the partner who oversees the financial statement work and has done that since the original contract was recompeted for the past 4 years, and from Phil Moore, who has overseen and led the FISMA audits for the full 9 years that Kearney has been working with us. Great results like the ones that you're going to hear about reflect NSF's commitments to the strength and integrity of its information security and financial systems and processes. And they also reflect the strong relationships that have been developed between NSF, Carney, and the OIG, which are due in no small part to the deep respect that each of those parties has to the dedication and expertise that their partners bring to these audits. So I couldn't agree with Janice more. We've had these incredible outcomes because of everyone's true commitment to these processes. And with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Brian to walk you through the findings on the financial statement audit. So Brian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Allison. Good afternoon, everyone. As Allison mentioned, my name is Brian Nelms. I am the engagement partner on the financial statement audit for NSF. I am hopeful that I can share my slides here. We do have a few to brief, so I get the opportunity to share it. If someone can confirm that they can see that, that would be great.
You can't see him yet, Brian.
Okay.
All right, there you go.
Yes.
All right. So as Allison mentioned, Carney and Company is the IPA that has performed 2 audits this past year for NSF. As I mentioned, I'm the engagement partner for the financial statement audit, and that's what I will brief first before turning it over to my colleague Phil Moore to brief the results on the FSMA. So for the scope of our financial statement audit, we reviewed the financials for fiscal year 24. Our audit kicks off in March, and our report was issued in November 13th of this past year. We issued 3 reports for NSF. One is what you hear, the opinion, and I believe Janice had mentioned for the 27th consecutive year, NSF has received an unmodified opinion. Our second report is our report on internal controls over financial reporting. As we did our test work this year, we've noted that the key controls and processes in place for NSF have remained fairly consistent and stable with the prior years. Our testing did not uncover any material weaknesses in that area. From a significant deficiency perspective, we did have 1 reportable condition this year, and that is new. We have 1 condition over information technology. You will see some of the findings detailed on the later slide, but NSF had 5 IT findings relating to recertification of privileged user accounts and service accounts, as well as timely disablement of users. So we did have quite a few IT NFRs that were aggregated to a reportable condition this year. That also represented there had been some standing weaknesses in the IT area, as well as some new conditions that were brought into that deficiency. Finally, the third report that we issued is our report on applicable laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements. We did not have any notices of non-compliance with material laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements. So a clean report there to include our reporting on FFMIA. I believe, as Allison also mentioned, a lot of work goes into this audit every year. Just because it's a clean audit doesn't mean that there's, it's smooth sailing. We had 14 different audit areas, hundreds of PBC requests, hundreds of sample items that go into producing these results. Through the March through November timeframe, quite a lot of dialogue goes back and forth in scheduling meetings, pulling samples, reporting on them. I'd like to thank the OIG for their partnership through this process, as well as NSF management and being able to timely support the audit. From my perspective, the audits ran about as smoothly as they possibly could over the last year, and we look forward to the upcoming fiscal year. I included the slide with our findings. What I did want to brief here, these are the findings that were issued for fiscal year 24. However, NSF did make progress from the prior year. For those that were on this call or part of the board last year, you would recognize that NSF had effective remediation over 3 financial findings, as well as 1 IT finding. The 2 financial findings issued were just leveled for management letter comments, so management has been made aware. And then the 5 IT findings that we are listed here, I had mentioned in the previous slide about being reported as a significant deficiency in internal control. I will pause here before I turn it over to Phil Moore to brief the FSMA to see if there are any specific questions on the financial statement audit.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian? I can't see raised hands or not, so. Seems as though there are none.
I don't see any either.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Thank
Phil?
you again.
Thank you, Wanda. Phil, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Again, Phil Moore, partner overseeing the FSMA audit. So again, thank you for inviting us here today. So the FSMA audit, this is the audit we do every single year over the IT security program of NSF. It is required by law, which is the FSMA Act, the Federal Information Security Management Act. Each year we look at 5 different areas, and you can see them listed: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. The government, DHS, issues guidance to us to say all the different metrics, as they're called, that we have to test on inside of those 5 areas. And they also give us the methodology to then rate them from 1, ad hoc, which means you don't have any policies, to 5, optimize, which means that you've not only succeeded in addressing the area, which is level 4, but you've also automated it. So level 4 would be an effective security program. Level 5 is just a little bit, you like get an A+ instead of an A. So those are the ratings that we have for each of the areas. So for identify, detect, actually all 5 areas are effective. So they were at least rated a level 4. And we did note that in one area inside protect had kind of subdomains under identity and access management that was rated 3, consistently implemented. And so per the guidance issued by DHS, that area was identified as ineffective. However, the program overall is effective. As per the audit report that we issued, performance audit report based on Yellow Book standards that we issued in November, the entire program is effective, and we did describe that in our FSMA audit report that we issue each year. Just like Brian said, a lot goes into this project. The government actually, DHS moved the deadline from October to July a couple years ago. And it takes a lot of work to get one as we get started in March and finish up basically all the testing and analysis of data in June to report out with these metrics by the end of July into an external system we have to post this to. And then we spend a little bit more time giving the Yellow Book performance audit report to the OIG and management later in the year. So more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your report. I see Roger. Roger has a question.
Yeah, thanks, Wanda. In prior years, we've had a response from you all about whether or not you found cooperation in the agency with the deficiencies, and you didn't comment on that this year. Has that changed?
I mean, from the IT side, the cooperation.
Well, from both sides, you and
Okay,
Brian.
so I can go first, and then Brian. Yeah, I felt through the all the IT work. The cooperation is amazing. Very seamless, very easy to work with. We issue a lot of documentation requests, issue a lot of meeting walkthroughs, and that collaboration's been great. So continues to be really good, and I really do appreciate everybody's hard work and time. It is a lot of hard work. Brian?
Yeah, I can add to that. From the financial statement audit perspective, any good audit starts with effective communication. I think the transparency both from management and the IG and facilitating great communication has helped the audit run smoothly. We did issue findings this year. We had a reportable condition. We had open and honest communication with management and the IG through that process, and no difficulties to answer your question, Mr. Beachy.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Jeffrey?
Thanks, Wanda. I don't know how you and other committee members feel about this, but I would be very interested in hearing more at a future meeting about corrective steps for some of these laws, especially the FSMA. I don't think that would be appropriate for an open meeting, but I would defer to others who know more. Over.
That's a very solid suggestion and recommendation, Jeffrey, and it is something that we'll certainly take up. And now that you're, sharing it with everyone present, it'll come as no surprise. We have had, continuing interest in knowing more about just that, about that issue. So let's take that up in a future meeting appropriately. It is always good to hear, and we hear that over time, that OIG believes it has and reports a very strong working relationship, responsive relationship with the foundation. Communication seems to be open. And so that's very encouraging to hear. I won't say deeper, the additional kinds of examination that you call for, we think is perfectly appropriate. And thank you for putting that on the table. I was going to ask, I don't see any other hands, and I'm mindful of the time. We're running out of time here, but I think Phil did report that NSF on FSMA has received an overall assessment of 4, which I believe he reports is quite good. I think he said a 5 equates to an A+. I was wondering, and I know agencies, differ on a number of dimensions, but are there comparable agencies that have achieved a 5, or how close or far would you think NSF is from reaching level 5?
Yeah, so I think 5 is, for what I've noticed across the government, it's hard to reach. Because also the concept is, how much money do you put into something? Money does not grow on trees, not infinite. So you got to put your resources at the appropriate spot. So per the guidance issued by DHS, they say a effective security program is 4. And then sometimes you automate something, and that's where a lot of the 5 comes into, more automation. And that's where we're able to say, oh yeah, you've went above the 4, which is perfectly reasonable to get to a 5. And which, in certain areas, in some of these metrics, if you go through each and every one, there are 5s throughout. But what we do is we have a methodology where we say, okay, if you have 5 metrics in this domain and 2 are 4 and 2 are a 5, well, we kind of average it out and come up with a methodology to OIG. So maybe it comes out to that one a 4, another one might be a 5. So they do have 5s throughout the metrics, but the overarching average across everything that we've looked at is consistently implemented. I'm sorry. So level 4 effective security. So, which I think is good, and a lot of work goes into that.
And could I just add to what Phil has said? One of the things caveats that we provide every year, especially in the FSMA space, they're assessing a dynamic universe, and how they assess it changes each year based on guidance that they get. So one can't assume that there's going to be a steady upward trajectory. There can be, up and then a little down, and it each year stands on its own. So I want to manage expectations, with that feedback too.
That's helpful, Allison. Thank you for that. One thing that Phil mentioned that is of interest beyond this domain is the state of tools that the foundation has at its disposal, again, across many domains. And one of the things that the board and others have observed is that in the spirit of continuous improvement, especially if significant value is going to be added, and we certainly found this within the Merit Review Reexamination Commission, that there is room, again, in the spirit of continuous improvement, for significant improvement in a number of infrastructure domains. And if I'm not mistaken, Ponch has mentioned recently or previously that one of the reasons he hired, I think, a CIO is to up NSF's game in that regard. And so maybe we should also include this for consideration as we look across the entire foundation as a means or an opportunity to strengthen the foundation's very good work even further. So we will hopefully note that in the minutes, just for consideration in the future. I want to thank you and Brian and Phil again for another excellent and very productive presentation discussion. I don't see any hands raised, and so I want to thank everyone for your participation in today's meeting. Please vote on the provisional closed minutes when you receive the email later today to my fellow commissioners. And with that, we conclude this afternoon's meeting of the Committee on Oversight at 1:58 p.m. And thank you all again for your preparation, your engagement, and thank committee members for your contribution to today's meeting. More to come. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Brandon, are we off? Is everything off?
Not yet.
I'm trying to end it now. Sorry.
It's all right. Thank you.
Oh, I wish Wanda had stayed on.
Maybe she'll come back on.
Maybe. We can
We're
talk.
still on YouTube.
Okay.